Hi, Utsav. Good to see you again. And it's been a pleasure speaking to you each time. And this time we are going to talk about your new album, Visangati. So before we talk about the album, I'll just pose a few questions in terms of how you used what you've learned so far to come up to the stage when you wanted to do this album, and how you adapted the piano and started playing Hindustani classical ragas. If you can briefly talk about that.
Yeah. So with with Indian classical music on the piano, this is something that I've been at for 17 years now. It started off as a more of an experiment when I was younger and something to do that was fun, and slowly turned into, oh wait, this is actually seems pretty meaningful, and there's a lot in here, which then would shift to, wait, this is such a bad idea because none of the things that the piano can do are possible on the instrument. And the deeper you go, the more you like realize what um, all the different imperfections in the instrument that stop you from being able to recreate an Indian classical performance. But then you also find thousands of other things that the piano has that are beneficial and can shed new light on the music. And it became a lot more about um, exploring the strengths of the piano, and also like finding ways around the weaknesses that in turn would um, help you develop new kind of sounds and new techniques to express yourself on the piano. And yeah, the deeper you got into it, the further away you realized you are. But all the tangential things that you end up learning when doing this, um, especially like say when I sit with my guru Ustad Vasavuddin Dagar or Sharat Srivastava who I learned from, it's you notice them doing like certain ornaments and certain intonations and phrase the rag. And what I was realizing was throughout the lessons, the knowledge of what they're doing was going straight into here, and then my work was to figure out how do I put it into my fingers
Mm.
and through the instrument
Yeah.
communicate it to your ear or any of the listeners' ears.
Okay.
And that is
Okay.
what kind of became the most interesting thing. Like, how do you communicate the mean of rag bihag without actually physically doing a mean on the piano?
Mm.
And um,
Okay.
in the end, like I just think with music, there's so much. A lot of it is about just communicating thoughts rather than the actual physical sound. There's
Mm.
always tricks and illusions and like smoke and mirrors in order
Okay.
to like communicate what emotion I'm thinking to
Mm.
your head. And
Okay.
that became kind of my main focus. Even with Indian classical music, with a lot of other styles of music, these lessons that I learned through my teachers and through
Mm.
listening to all of these great artists, um,
Mm.
it became incredibly useful to try and learn how to communicate those without actually doing them on the piano.
Okay. So that brings us to the album, Visangati. Before we talk about the different pieces, like if you could just explain what made you think of that title and what does it signify in terms of your style of music and this Visangati as a word.
I mean, Visangati as a word is pretty strange and unique. I was excited when I found that because it kind of brings in the ambivalence of playing Indian music on the piano, where there's like, at least from my end, there's like a huge amount of passion and drive of I need to get this as close as when the Dagger brothers are singing like Mia Malhar. Like I have to achieve that because that's the peak for me. But it's also then realizing that this is kind of absurd and
Mhm.
um, illogical to do that,
Mhm.
and maybe I should just be a singer.
Mhm.
And Visangati, the many translations of the word that I found is anomaly, which is what
Anomaly.
made me go towards it,
Okay.
deviating from the norm. But then there's also like illogicality and absurdity and
Mhm.
um, uh, a lot of different ways to approach that word, and it seemed like a perfect way to like capture the ambivalence of trying to play this music on the piano.
Okay.
That's in my head, and I'm sure in a lot of other people's heads too. But on the surface, it's also like such a beautiful word. Like if you don't know what it means, then it sounds like Sangati, like Visangati, with Sangati, like so.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. I like words that mean a lot of different things, and it's not that one meaning is more than the others. It's like nice to have both, and then you have a richer experience from having all these different shades of looking at it, which is not unlike a rag as well, because it's nice to think, or even like a rag or a bluegrass tune. Because it's like I always think of like any kind of composition or any kind of musical idea like diamond shape. So it's not just one dimensional way of looking at it. It has all these different sides, and you can approach it from any side and explore on that side. And when the more sides that you know, the richer the actual object is.
Yeah, facets, different facets. Okay, can you tell us about the compositions that you played here? How did you go about with the album, choosing the content, the ragas, and then how did you think of the particular compositions?
So with the main rag on the album, which is Rag Lalit, which I did in a Drupad Alapjorjala style, that was a rag that was taught to me by Vasavdinji, and I've been obsessed with Lalit for a year and a half now, and I knew I wanted to get a recording of that because it's very heavy and meaty as a rag, but also extremely beautiful, and it has the right amount of dissonance in it for me, where there's a lot of very interesting sound wells that you get out of the rag that you wouldn't usually hear unless you were in that kind of space. And with that rag, I wanted to do a Drupad Alapjorjala, and then we did two compositions in Vilambit Tintal and in Drut Ektal. The way that I usually go into these things is I prepare 5 or 6 compositions, and then you see what feels like it's flowing when you're in the studio. And prepare a lot of material in all of them, and like spend months improvising and getting as comfortable as you can, and you go in and 1 or 2 takes max, play through Lalit and hope. It's usually the first take that's the best. I think on the record, for almost everything, it's the first take that we did, except for one track where it cut out towards the end of the first take, so we had to redo it.
Okay. Who's on the tabla? Nitin?
Nitin Mehta ji is on the tabla. He's incredible tabla player.
Okay. He's from Delhi, or?
I'm not sure where in India he's from, but he used to be based in New York for many years, and he had a unique place where he was playing with all of the big Indian classical names, and they would come here, Shahidji and Jasrajji and all. But then he also played with Vijay Iyer and a lot of jazz musicians, and he's touring with Reza Basi and Kiran Ahluwalia, and he's just very, he's incredibly detailed in playing what is needed at that moment. So when he's in a jazz setting, he doesn't do the usual Indian classical things. Like he has that level of nuance to know, like, this might be in 4 beats, but that doesn't mean you just play tintal solos over it. There's like different ways of approaching it. And in terms of Indian classical music, he's a very kind of succinct player. Like it's just when it comes to like interaction and tabla solos, like he knows exactly the right amount and he never overdoes it, which is very special for me. And in the bits where there's fire needed, he's got like a lot of fire to put into it.
Wow. What about the other compositions? You've done Bihag, for instance.
So this was recorded this was recorded in October last year, so deep into lockdown in New York. And one of the things that I'd been kind of veering towards during the start of the lockdown was I got very interested in Thumri and very
Okay.
interested in um, a bunch of lighter compositions. I was just making huge lists of like um, compositions to try and expand my repertoire and also like hear what is actually being done, because there's such a different level of detail in those pieces than there is in like the serious rugs. It's I feel like like sometimes it feels like because it's lighter, it means there's less work that needs to go into it. But it's a whole different world. And there's a great book that I was reading by Lalita Duparan, which was about the language and use of language in Tumri, which was absolutely incredible. So I picked kind of two compositions, Neer Bharan Kaise Jaun and Yad Piya Ki Aaye, which are both pretty popular Tumris, and Yad Piya Ki Aaye definitely Bade Ghulam Ali Ji's recording is like for me the seminal Tumri
Yeah.
performance. It's like I can't believe how much emotion is drenched in that 1 3 minute recording. So I wanted to try those, and I really wanted to try and put my own touch on them while keeping a general idea of how Tumri is presented.
Okay.
And then the other track is La Tulchi in
Bihar.
Rag Behag, which is again a composition that you hear everyone play, but everyone does it in their own way, and it takes on. Again, going back to the diamond analogy, like each of these compositions has so many different facets that you can explore from. We actually recorded a bunch more music on the day that we were in the studio, but these are the ones that feel like putting like it shaped together. Otherwise we'd have a 2 hour long record, which
No, but I'm sure you're planning it for the next record, like you.
yeah, we might release some of the other things as singles in time. Right now, I wanted to focus, get this mixed, mastered. It was recorded by Robin Bayer, who's an incredible engineer, and he actually used the mixing of this record as a way of giving me master classes in how to listen and think. So it was a big learning experience as well.
Okay. So that's fantastic. And it was great to hear you talk about Visangati and all the other collaborations. And I wish you all the best. And I'm sure this will be a wonderful listening experience to all the listeners out there. So, yes, and have a great day, Utsav, and see you
too.
some other time.
Thank you. So nice to see you. All right. Bye.
Yeah, same here.